My name's Christine. I'm here today with Claudia, Lori, who's known as Spirit Wind on the forums, and Marin. We're sort of the ladies of Earth Empaths. I think that's the easiest way to describe us all. We are a group of women that came together, and I throw in the guys too, even though they rarely show up. About 4 years we've been working together. Our work consists of getting together several times a week. We do what you might want to be described as shamanic journeying, where we look into things, we look beyond the surface reality into the deeper realities of the unseen world. During this time, we've learned a lot, not just about how the world operates, but we've also learned about a lot about ourselves. We've learned a lot of different aspects of ourselves, things that we've had to work on internally. We're definitely a group of people that have done our own shadow work. We've done it independently, and sometimes, I would say not sometimes, but we're always here for each other for that type of work. So this that we want to present today is the third part of a group of, or a series called Forbidden Subjects. We will look at anything. That is the byline of not in our name, which is the truth no matter where it leads us. And sometimes it leads us to surprising places. It leads us to unexpected and sometimes disturbing. I would say for myself that quite often I'll hit something that is disturbing into my own particular personal view or paradigm of reality. So it is an honor always for me to be sitting in a space with the women here and looking at the subject. The subject today is Lucifer. Lucifer started coming into our consciousness. Well, I'll speak for myself, and then maybe each of you want to speak for yourself. Lucifer for me is a very personal relationship. It's not an esoteric relationship. It is one that I have been trying to illuminate within myself to understand who Lucifer is, what is my relationship to Lucifer, why I've been called Lucy so many times in my life, and why I have been made to feel shame and guilt because of this relationship. What it's led me to in a series of intercessions, work that others have done, is that Lucifer is primarily the light bringer into this realm, did it on a very purposeful journey here, and that's what we're going to discuss today. I feel very, very strongly and motivated to explore this. I don't think we have all the answers. I don't think any of us will say ever that we have all the answers, but we're certainly not afraid or discouraged by broaching these forbidden subjects. And Lucifer certainly is one of them. So, Claudia, I don't know if you'd like to say something personal or add to
that. My personal relationship was absolutely non-existent, actually, until a few months ago. I've always kind of wondered why some people would connect or directly associate Lucifer with Satan, whereas a few would say, no, it's quite the opposite. But I was, until recently, I was never really driven to learn about the reasons or the being.
Mm-hmm. So something's changed, right? I mean, and
positively.
I do.
And I also came to realize once again that the more I learned about it, the less I knew.
Yeah. Well, I think what we're going to try to do here is unwind a very twisted, overlaid history of our planet, of our reality. I will say that several months back, I had a personal experience. I want to add here too that a lot of what we talk about in this is a combination of experiential data, body memories, and other things that are combined with our research. So I became aware of a release of huge energy on the planet that came straight out of the Vatican. Now, I wasn't aware that there were 3 people doing some work at that time. I had an independent experience of it. And what I saw happen in my mind's eye, and it was very mind's eye, but it was also very bodily, visceral, was a great release of energy of a being that was released from bondage, that shot up into the stratosphere because I could follow it as far as I could follow that energy. It was plasma-like. It was energy. But when it hit a certain level above the earth plane, it released wings. And it extended these enormous wings. And all I can say is that I literally cried in relief. I cried for humanity. I cried for the earth. I cried and cried and cried. And that's all I knew then. I later found out that some people had done some work, and that at the same time that I was receiving that image, that something was being done at the Vatican. And I think we all are well aware that would be listening to this, that the Vatican has held and captured a great deal of the great energies, angelic energies on our planet. So thank you for sharing that, Claudia. And just because that relationship seems to become more and more important, that we understand it right now.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. And Lori?
I don't really have anything to add at this moment.
Okay. So if we're ready, I would like to, the only thing I want to say about you, Lori, is that you're one of the most incredible researchers I've ever come across. And not only that, we share a lot of, and very, very much in common. But you know, this is the other part, and I would encourage any listeners right now to do their own research. This is really, you know, this isn't us being any experts. We're not standing here as any authority figure. And so we're just going to explore our explorations and put them forth and see where that goes from there. So I'm going to do a screen share right now. I'm going to bring up the PowerPoint that we put together. I guess I also want to say here that there was something, we've been working on this for a while and have had a lot of, you know, I would say inertia, pushback, different aspects that, so we're just going to go for it, all right, whether we're prepared for it or not. Okay, I've got the right screen up. All right. So this is the first visual, and I think between visual research and our talking, Lucifer is referred to as the light bringer. Lucifer is referred to as the son of the morning. Venus is referred to as the morning star. So what this depiction is here is that we have, very clearly, we have these big angelic wings. We could say an energetic being, a non-created being in matter, and we have the feminine form, Venus as love, within the feminine range. And this is a very important part of what we're exploring here. So it is an exploration. And I also want to say, as we get into this, that part of what we are trying to do is decipher. We're living in a puzzle, in a holographic world of overlays. So how are we going to decipher it? I think Lucifer comes in as probably one of the most visible entities talked about that can show us not only what reality might be, but also how it's been twisted and how it's been kept from us. So I'm just going to read this and then invite anybody to speak up. So it has been in my worldview for quite a while that we need to turn the world upside down, or we need to look at it from inside out, like reverse the flows of how we normally see things. We're very entrained to look at the world in a one-way directional. We look at the world from here to there, from inside out. And, you know, so that is really an aspect to it. There's an aspect of fire and water that we're going to talk about, right? So that's the fire inside looking out through the reflection. Also, when we're doing the inside turned out, one of the things that has to happen here for us to get to any truth is tearing down paradigms. You know, we are conditioned beings here in this reality. We're very, very conditioned. So it takes a bit of courage to actually tear down a paradigm. And it can become very disconcerting for a soul in that way. Also, we're going to talk about the misdirect of the use of the word, the Luciferian rebellion. This term is used plentifully by many truth tellers without actually ever explaining what they mean. So the suggestion is that we stop using these words that have been co-opted, and we start to use words that describe energies and perceptions. And again, and again, question everything, leaving no stone unturned. I think this is actually very essential for us to get to what would be determined as the truth. If anybody, I can't see anything because I'm looking at my screen, so just say something if you want to. Okay, I'm just going to go to the next slide. All right, so we're going to start looking at, and you'll see the imagery here, that Lucifer is Luzbea, Luzbel, the beautiful light. The word Lucifer actually comes from the word phosphorus in Greek. We'll talk about that in a little bit. From the Latin, tu veras mundi Lucifer, you are the true light bringer of the world. Right away, what we're looking at is that there is a lot of written textual knowledge out there that doesn't talk about Lucifer as Satan, but talks about Lucifer as the light bringer. Jose Haro Aragon, in his Primordial Gnosis, The Forbidden Religion, he writes, according to Gnostic legends and myths, the great unknowable God sent Lucifer, angel of indescribable fire and light, to show man the light and to help him wake up and see his true origin, the origin of his spirit, which has been perversely imprisoned in this impure matter that we call body-soul. He is an uncreated being who came to the created world to bring light, liberating gnosis, the saving knowledge what can wake up man and help him free from his imprisoned spirit. The knowledge which allows him to know who he truly is, why he is here in this world, and what he has to do to liberate himself and fulfill his spirit, which belongs to another uncreated and unknowable plane. For me, this sums up pretty well what gnosis is and what we can see as who is Lucifer, and why any counterforce or adversarial force would want to obscure and hide him, use him. I'm saying him right now. We'll look at that in a moment. From us human beings on this planet, encased in a body soul, from actually finding our own liberation. I also want to say my only one disagreement with this whole statement, I would say that matter is impure. I would say that part of Lucifer's fall, or coming into this creation, was to rise up the body soul and to rise up the matter on this material plane. So that would be my only statement from what I just read.
I agree with what you're disagreeing with, because purely from an intuitive point, it is my understanding that we can evolve, rise up out of this physical matter while remaining in the physical. Mm-hmm. And it is my understanding that this is the goal for humanity.
Yeah. And
so I think you're spot on.
Mm-hmm. So I'm going to go to the next slide because we're going to be exploring that at that very aspect of it. I do say that, matter here, we all know that, we're not in a perfected state by any means in this plane, but there's something very important about that. So what Lucifer is commonly referred to is the fallen angel. I think this depiction of, the breaking of the gates of heaven and earth, Lucifer falling, into a darkened realm is pretty apropos. But the story that the common or the mass consciousness is aware of is according to what I'm calling the theocrats, or we could call them the manipulators. We could call them the transhuman entrained beings that want to control, that want to manipulate this reality for their own use. I think Lucifer, the absorption of Lucifer and who Lucifer is a primordial energy that has been co-opted. So it takes a bit of doing to try to see through the deception here. So there is a deception. We're also going to be looking at, which is depicted in this picture, a war that took place in heaven. There's a lot of documentation of a war in heaven. I don't think yet I've heard or discovered for myself anything that fully depicts that, but that there was, in my mind and in my experience, there is no doubt. And out of that war in heaven came what I wrote down here is soul harvesting. And so that is this harvesting of the human entrapped in this human body, taking their soul vital energy and using it for other than what it was intended for, which is within creation's aspect itself. So we will be looking at the improper use of energy. And then what is the Luciferian? Just leave the question right now. What is the Luciferian rebellion really about? I am sure from all the hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands of videos that I have listened to over time, is that usually everything in the New World Order, everything is referred to as the Luciferian rebellion. So I want to bring that up here. What is it really about? Okay, and then we are told in biblical scripture, we're told in other texts that Lucifer, the angelic realms of Lucifer, that split into three parts, that a third of the angels followed Lucifer into this manifestation. And I'm going to just put out here that we can perhaps look at Lucifer as the great redeemer, that Lucifer actually came here for a very specific reason.
I just wanted to make a comment about what it is to be a rebel, because we've pretty well been programmed to look at rebels of society as like there's something wrong with them and they need to conform, when actually the opposite is true. It is those who are willing to stand up and rebel against a controlling adversarial force that really need to step up to the plate, because sometimes being a rebel is a good thing. And that could have actually been the case with this fall from consciousness, that he came to experience consciousness in a different way after the fall that was not at the same level as before the fall. But just that, we have been socialized and programmed to think that rebellion is a bad thing. But if we have to stand up and rebel against an adversarial force, is that not a good thing that we do stand up?
Right.
Just to question the whole paradigm and thinking. That's all.
And it's a very good point. And along with the fact is that, when we talk about Luciferian rebellion, I haven't heard anybody really explain it, in a way that makes sense to me. It's just commonly used, and I rebel against that. I rebel against putting labels on things that lead us to believe things. So this comes from inside of me in a lot of ways, what I'm bringing here right now. On the Earth Empaths Forum, initiated a discussion thread. There's several of them now about the divine masculine and the divine feminine. And there seems to be a split here that we haven't gotten to the bottom of. So I say Lucifer, an angel that came to earth, the original split. And what I put here and depicted here, and this is for speculation purposes, something rings very true to me in that, is that the masculine, the uncreated, the unmattered, the spiritual being out of matter is in heaven, if you want to say it that way. When that split happened, the part that fell into matter is the feminine. And I think this is because when I use the word mother, I use the word mater from the Latin and the word matter. And in this aspect, the way I'm speaking of it, all creation that is the physical realities is matter, is mother. It is the feminine aspect. So part of what it is looking at here is and Lori, you said it the other day when you said it set up a longing in us.
Ah, yes.
If you think of a whole being splitting itself off and actually allowing half of itself to go into a dark realm for a very specific purpose, it sets up a longing that is undeniable. There is a longing in the human being for wholeness, for integration, for return. And I think in many, many ways it had to be this way. This is what we're going to be talking about right now. So I'll just read these and then open it up for talk. The light bearer made a purpose. These are postulates, they're possibilities, they're things that we're putting forward here for examination. The light bearer, Lucifer, made a purposeful descent. The choice was of great sacrifice to embody an aspect in the darkened realms. Actually, a third of the angelic realms followed. That would mean that a third of the angels, and I don't know how many there are actually embodied right now in human form here on this planet. And I know people that know that. I know those that have remembered that. I personally have some memory of it myself. That this fall, or this coming down into this particular body, it was that there was to repair a rift that was caused by the great destruction of Tiamat. And we'll talk about that. I personally have seen myself and experienced a great rift in the time and space compendium that we are inhabiting right now. That Earth and Sophia, as we can call her, or Eve, or however we want to put a descriptor on the great wisdom body, is embodied here in this earth plane. And there's a reason for that. That she is actually gnosis, and she is the living library that cannot be erased and cannot be forgotten. That Christ, as the son of the morning, is Lucifer, and that Venus is the morning star, is Lucifer. This is the union of the two, the male and the female. And Venus is, we know, love. She is Aphrodite. She is love manifest. So for myself to say this right now is the return of love into the manifest world instead of this dark world that we are inhabiting right now. And so that would become the energetic marriage of these energies of creation. We're going to talk about, we've talked about before, I don't want to go into it too deep, but are also the planetary bodies that are in this solar system. The moon and the Saturn being the matrix of the simulator. And I'm not using this in an evil way right now. I'm just saying that there's a simulation going on at the same time. There's an organic realm and there's a simulation. That when we talk about energies, when we talk about implosion, we are talking about an act of creation. When we're talking about explosion, which is what we see on our planet right now, we're talking about an action of destruction. And that the possibility that I hold forth is that the return or the second coming is each individuated spark or spirit returns to its own plasma light body. So this is what I have, what we have written here. the three of us and others have had many roundtable discussions on this subject, and I don't know if anybody wants to bring up something. It's quite a lot of material here. And specifically, if you want to bring up something about implosion, Claudia, because you and I have spent a lot of time on
that. It was a principle that Victor Schauberger actually discovered, that the principle of explosion is always destruction and therefore satanic, whereas the principle of implosion is in harmony with creation and therefore divine. This basically goes for everything. You have cars that are based on explosion, and this is what keeps the satanic world going, literally. You have energy, forms of energy that are based on implosion, such as anti-gravity devices, for example. The reason they are so suppressed is because the elite who thinks they rule the world are hell-bent on keeping Satanism alive, destruction alive. I know that sounds like an oxymoron, because destruction always destroys itself in the end anyway, but either they are missing something or we are missing something in this concept.
Mm-hmm. Right. And, I mean, when we look at any principle of energetics, we're looking at it from a personal, and then we can extend it out into further dynamics also, right? And so, but it always will start within us. And, the return to our own divinity is really, really the drive here, is not just to be in the mental realms of that we know we're divine beings, but to actually implode inside ourselves to become the divine beings that we are. We'll talk about a little more, because that's where it really seems to be lying, the answer, because we are living in a holograph of sorts and a simulation of sorts.
Mm-hmm.
So, wrote his story, or is it our story? So his story is a story that we were told. And I put it out as his story because the predominant paradigm right now comes through a priestly caste. It comes through a patriarchal caste. I'm not throwing a bad light on men when I say that. It's just a fact, right? So him, the priesthood, the dark priesthood, has told us a story that the mass of consciousness of humanity has taken on. The other aspect, our story. Are we going to write our story? So I'm just looking at it from a very Gnostic perspective right now. Satan, to me, is not a being. Satan is the demiurge, the consumer of souls that has taken over the world. We call it the Rex Mundi. Right? So this is a creation of false realities. It's based on lies. And the only way it can exist, Satan can only exist, is that we continue to give Satan our energy. Satan ceases to exist when enough consciousness is pulled back, enough of us unplug from the lies. And that's how my personal view of Satan is. So you could say it's the evil whisperer in the ear of all consciousness. It's the battle that each individual goes through. Everyone knows right from wrong. We all do. So it comes down to individual responsibility. Lucifer, the light bearer. The name Lucifer is derived from the Greek word for phosphorus, the light bringer, the central fire, or the pleroma. We're looking at something totally different here when you look at these two images. And here you see in this picture, you see the swirl of angels. It's all working towards a central fire. It has a purpose. And it's for each individual to figure out what that purpose is for themselves. This is not about the great hive mind. It's not about the great, we are all one, and therefore, we're all going to go back. This is individuated spiritual beings finding their own individuated answers. Anybody? So we have a split world.
You said it very well.
Thank you. I'm a bit on a roll today. So, all right, this image is, we have a world split. We are in a duality. For anybody to deny that we're in duality, we're not dealing or confronting the energies as they are. So we have light and dark, we have good and evil. Even Carl Jung says the idea that Lucifer was the most beautiful of the angels also comes from the center. So we're looking at something that came from the central fire, the central realms, the center of beingness, if we will, the center of creation, if we will, the pleroma. And it's split into a realm of world of dark and light and good and evil. There's a reason for that. I mean, I feel like, that so many of us are pulled constantly between, thinking that we have to be either light or we're in the dark. Or if you're in the dark, you're not in the light. Actually, Claudia, you say many beautiful things about the light that's in the dark.
Well, for starters, light can't exist without dark.
Right. And there is a dark light.
Oh, yes.
And it vibrates at a different speed than the light that we see in the physical realm.
Yes, I mean, if you take, from frequency perspective, if light vibrates so fast that you cannot see it, you perceive it as darkness.
Right.
And also, if light is so bright, it can blind you. Mm-hmm. So you have basically a duality wherever you look.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, if you think about, if it was all light, there would be no individuation, would there?
No.
So we're talking about Lucifer, an uncreated being that came into this realm as the light bearer, right? So we actually see each other in the shadows. Mm-hmm. We actually see each other in that way. So it's very interesting. It would take away from it, that there's other out there doing these things. I'm very much interested in, ferreting out the gnosis that each of us has inside. Claudia, I know that, you put together a lot of this when you were researching, but there's plenty out there on the internet that anybody wants to research it, is that there are lots of biblical references that show that Lucifer is not Satan. It was a purposefully done, this confusion of putting the name Lucifer onto the name Satan.
Well, also, the name Lucifer is mentioned in the Bible only once, in Isaiah 14:12. And then in the sense of the morning star, it is said to have been Jesus who said he is the morning star. Mm-hmm. So, no, there's nothing in the Bible that suggests that Lucifer is the same as Satan. Mm-hmm. Nothing at all. Mm-hmm. And the word fallen, in my mind, can also be, it's not a fall as from falling from the divine down into evil or anything like that. Mm-hmm. The heaven is above the earth. that is common understanding throughout probably all religions. And so when somebody comes down from heaven, he or she falls down.
Mm-hmm.
So it is not, it doesn't have to be in any way negative.
Right, right, exactly. I mean, that's a really good point, because this is how conditioned our thought patterns are.
Yes, absolutely. And he let himself or herself fall down from heaven onto earth. That's a very feminine thing because it's passive. He didn't climb into a spacecraft to come down here. Okay, he let himself fall. That is feminine because, you just allow it to happen.
Mm-hmm. And we'll talk a little bit more too about why that might be, right? What really happened here, that going back to a little bit more of the war aspect of it. And we just see over and over again, and I just invite anybody that doesn't wants to know a little more, if you start to investigate how confused this is. And this again comes to the point that you, I, Lori, all of us are talking about all the time, is like the conscious use of words. It's we the people, when we speak, are making the spell, or we're breaking the spell, or we're speaking from a language of truth. There is a middle path that has the language of truth to it. Mm-hmm. We have to be conscious of it. And so I just, when I would, anybody that would hear this, when we use these different words, make sure inside yourself what is the truth of it. And so we quit using, especially terms like Satan and Lucifer and rebellion and all of these terms that are just, it perpetuates something that may not be true. So here we have again from the biblical Revelations 22:16. I, Jesus, have sent my messenger to you.
I would also...
Go ahead, Lori, I'm sorry.
To comment on a fall usually is a sign of imbalance. When you fall, you lose your balance. So maybe it's also an indication that something was out of balance.
Yeah, very
absolutely.
And this is actually on the next slide coming up. Is that exactly that? Yeah, I mean, it's not like, oh, let me just go down there and see what happened. I mean, there's a great reason and great, all of creation operates on certain principles and certain laws. And when there is imbalance, it needs to be rectified. So, here we also look at, that Jesus speaks of this too, that Jesus is relating himself to the light bearer. We could say, perhaps even make the conclusion, or look at it could be that what we know is Jesus, who is the Christ light, is carrying the light of Lucifer, that he also manifested here in the physical form to rectify an imbalance, to bring something into this creation. And there's plenty of references to that all over. That is referred to quite often. So, yeah, this is what you were saying, exactly this, Lori. And, I know that we've all spent a lot of time on the different models of the cosmic tree of life, or the tree of life, or the tree of good and evil. And I say I said, we talked about this the other day. I wrote here, in a realm or quadrant of creation, such as our Milky Way galaxy, when there is a great imbalance, a force is directed to rectify this. The postulate that we're making here, that Lucifer chose to fall or descend into matter to bring a new angle to creation, a much needed one. So if we're thinking about falling into the darkened realms, that the light bearer would, in a way, sacrifice or make this choice to fall into this. And so, how I perceive it in myself is that in the deepest dark, and now I'm not talking about the organic dark where all potentiality lies, but it does lie here too, is that something was so greatly imbalanced here that a being of that nature would make a descent, and then a third of the angelic realm would make that descent with Lucifer. It begs some looking at, actually. So, just, I was looking at here, I said the answers are hidden in the dark and in the forbidden. So many, I'm going to bring in a couple things right now too, is that I'm listening to different people, like Mark Passio. There's some incredible truth tellers out there that aren't talking about people coming to save us or ET races coming to save us. They're talking truth. They're talking it from an inner knowledge point of view. And so to not be afraid, Mark Passio did a great thing on Aleister Crowley. Fabulous, because we are entrained to not look at an Aleister Crowley because he was a black magician. So we have Freemasons, we have the Knights Templar, we have secret societies all over the planet that have held occulted knowledge. And I will say that they do have knowledge.
There's no doubt.
And they've used this knowledge. Knowledge is knowledge. Energy is energy. Truth is truth. It's what we use it for. So for only any being, a person, to get to their own gnosis state, you have to look into your own darkness. You have to be able to look into and bring out of the shadows your own light. And so, I think there's a lot of mistakes in the truth movement right now, is that all Freemasons have now been classified as evil and New World Order people, right? Or all those that have delved into the dark who took the courage to take the plunge. And sure, a lot of them got lost. Because when you run into power, you run into the greatest temptations. So yes, a lot of them did, but they also opened up the field and they brought it out to the mass consciousness. So it wasn't held in these private enclaves and these covens all over the planet that are using it to manipulate us. So, it does take a little bit of courage. It takes a lot of discernment. It takes a lot of personal discernment to be able to not throw out the babies with the bathwater. Look at the Freemasonry, look at the Knights Templar. These things were founded on certain esoteric truths. It doesn't mean they were evil. That they were usurped or used? Probably. So I'll move to the next one. Claudia, I'm going to call on you a little bit to speak about this, because we live in a fiction for the most part. It's a creation.
Yeah.
I say all isms, or we have said, or just came to me to say, that all isms are constructs. Everything that has ism put on the end of it is a construct. It's a system.
Yep.
And a system, once created, will seek to maintain itself. All systems will. So anything that's within that realm of a construct will seek to maintain itself, whether it's based on a reality or it's based on a fiction. So a fiction, for anyone, is what someone else tells you and you believe it. There's another fiction that by being a better person, you will ascend to heaven. That's based on a lie. You're already a divinely created being. There's no better you. There's only discovering who you are. That someone else knows more than you. That's not true either. We each know something. We're each a piece of some greater knowledge. We're each a piece of a wisdom body. It's not about knowing more or better things than you know. It's about discovering what you know. That any institution is the truth, Probably one of the biggest lies out there.
Yeah.
Right? We go to college to learn what? We go to a doctor to get what? We listen to our government for what reason? We pay taxes. Why? Right? Are they the truth bearers? I mean, this is where the rubber meets the road for each of us. How invested are we in those institutions? Okay.
Our entire reality is based on a lie.
Yeah.
And you can't get out of it until you unravel the lie.
Yeah.
And that is only the first step.
Exactly. And how beautifully you said that, Claudia. It's one of the things that came to me the other day is like, there's so many, really beautiful beings out there and helping bring forth that we maintain a presence or awareness, which is fully necessary for any of us to get to a point of presence and awareness. That means like I'm aware. That means I've unraveled enough of the falsehoods and the lies that either I carried or I was immersed in to hold presence. And I really admire, Eckhart Tolle's and, the Robert Spiros of the world that actually hold that energy well enough so it's tangible that we can come to a presence of now. But
yeah,
not the whole answer. That's only a step. Once you're aware, then what?
Exactly.
And so then we say the thing that's kept occult knowledge is dangerous. This is a great ploy to keep us from looking into the dark.
Well, of course. I mean, everything is upside down, inside out in this, what we call reality, which isn't reality at all.
Mm-hmm. Right? Just even in the people that I know and I have contact.
You always have to ask. I just wanted to say you always have to ask, it's dangerous to who?
Right.
Yes.
I always ask who is really telling this story, no matter what it is.
Absolutely.
Yep. And see, this brings up another point, when you get to a certain level of conscious awareness, that you can look at something from many angles without having to agree or disagree with them. I think Mark Passio does an extraordinary job of bringing that forward. When he says, the sign of wisdom or the sign of intelligence, can you hold things in your consciousness without that, just to be able to hold them there? We're so triggered to agree or disagree or opinionate. So, and so when we move into what we're looking at here is a potentiality of something being real. And what is real? What you know is true. It's not what I say is true, it's what you know. And the terminology and the way that many, 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 those that have come and mastered this reality to some degree, enlightenment is not a getting better process, it's a deconstructive process.
Mm-hmm.
It's taking apart the false beliefs. It's figuring it out for yourself.
It's undoing your mind control.
Yes.
Which starts the moment you're born.
Right. And has gone on for
eons.
Right? But just taking it from the moment you're born. You're born into a construct.
Yeah.
A contextualized world that is a spell that's been made by words and agreed upon. So the where I go so often is what if enough of us, enough consciousness got together and said, we're going to allow something great and wonderful and new to emerge through us. We stop agreeing with this reality. Whole purpose of even talking right now.
Mm-hmm.
Really the whole purpose of it. So we also have an amazing amount of consciousness on the planet right now. Probably more is available to any one of us right now. Science as the real science is showing what spirituality is. when we start to unravel the fields of mathematics and quantum and plasma energy models. We're moving into another way. Maybe it's all conceptualization too, but it brings our consciousness into a more full expression. We're not limited by gravity any longer. So, there are other models out there now. Encourage anybody to explore them. We'll talk about a few in a moment. Do your own work. This is like, for me, is something that I can't say enough. Do your own work. We are in a field of truth. Well, we're in a field of great inertia here.
Yeah. Look for truth, even if it's uncomfortable for you. And I mean, there's no doubt truth is or can be very uncomfortable. But you get over that one, and then the field opens and widens. Your perspectives widen.
Very much so. And it's something, you can only say nobody can do it for you.
No.
There's not a soul, a being, I don't care how grand. There are those that have enough energy that can open up your field of perception for you, but the work still is yours to do. It's
the only way to get out
of
this construct.
Yeah. So as they say, knowledge is power. This is gnosis. This is what the Gnostics know.
And the truth shall set you free. It's true.
It is true. We say these things as truth-isms. They've become truth-isms. This is the co-opting of language. Something that is so simple, such as the truth shall set you free, has been turned into an ism, so people discard it and they don't look deeper into that.
Of course.
It's the truth. We're going to bring this in here. We're trying to put things together, and we're going to look at a few things. But again, this is about the energetic model that we are looking at currently. Again, there is some amazing, amazing research going on, amazing minds out there. I am astounded daily by how many beings and people are out there really willing to look at things differently. Why I have this here is that we spent a lot of time recently looking at Saturn, the part of being part of the simulation, being chronos or time. One of the constructs that we are stuck in is time. We haven't gotten out of time. So there is the work of David Talbot and a few others, which is Thunderbolts of the God. I recommend that people get familiar with that work. Started looking at the earth in a different way and started really paying attention to the ancients. And all across all ancient civil, or more what we would call indigenous, long-time inhabitants of Mother Earth have similar stories. So the speculation is that this great cataclysm that happened in our solar system, that at one point Saturn actually was our sun, and that we were in a axial or polar alignment. In other words, we weren't in a spherical, movable, ecliptical solar system, that actually Earth lined up with Mars, Saturn, and I think Mercury, and that we were actually captured. I can say captured. We were in this axial alignment, and that at a point of being, Venus moved into that alignment, which broke it apart. So I'm just bringing it here to be looked at. I don't know if anybody has anything to actually say about that. But it actually brings a part of the idea that there was something major that happened. Along with all of this is one of the things is that there was these great plasmic discharges. Some could say dragons, that they were seen as dragons. They were these great, terrible plasmic discharges. There's signs of vitrification, which is electrical discharge, all across the planet. So I can't answer, or do I, but I look at it as to what happened, why it happened. I don't see planetary bodies as rocks floating in space. They're they're sentient beings of great intelligence. So, and all of our mythologies talk about the gods as being planets. So is this part of what we can call the war in heaven? So I'm just like, this is here not because there's any answers here. There's
below
questions, and just titled the slide, Looking for the Timeline. And I believe that this is a very difficult thing for us to come to. It seems like there's so many overlays here. But we do know that there have been cataclysmic destructions on our planet. We do know now that there was a planet, the fifth planet from the sun, as known as Tiamat. And that Tiamat was destroyed, and much speculation that is the asteroid belt. I think, just to speak of back in 2009, Michael Tessarian, I did not know this, aligns Tiamat with Lucifer. So there's a lot of overlays here. There's a lot of things that can be looked at. When I innerly, and I look at the Sumerian text also on Tiamat, it described Tiamat as a luminous, watery world. The feminine aspect, she is known as the feminine being. She was the salt water to the pure waters of the heaven. We can look at, actually go into physics and look at the super consciousness or the super fluids, which are salt water and fresh water based. I mean, there's so many ways to look at this and try to get to something that is useful for our own gnosis here. But the feelings that we've explored is that when Tiamat was destroyed, it wasn't supposed to happen.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So it's very difficult when we look at a mind construct that says everything has a purpose and everything is and at some ultimate level it is. There's a growing amount of people that are coming to us an aspect that this was the great trauma, that it was a traumatic event, unexpected, somewhat similar but different from when John Lash says that Sophia came out of the pleroma, came out of the galactic center and embodied herself as the planet Earth. That something unexpected happened with that fall too. When you're dealing with energetic levels, such as these huge trillion-mile jet streams or plasma discharges, it becomes very difficult to personify it or to really, truly understand it. My own deep intuitive feeling is that this created a rift in the time-space continuum, and that many are here right now to try to mend that. And they've come from everywhere. It's that important. So that's really what I have to say about that. I don't know if anybody else wants to add any other pieces of knowledge to that.
Yeah, my understanding is that very unlike what happened with Sophia becoming Earth or falling to Earth, Tiamat was actually actively destroyed intentionally. And that is what caused the trauma. That's why we have what Mark Passio refers to as abandonment. Children are abandoned by their parents, even though they live in the same house, apartment, whatever. But the connection is not there.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
And that is the very cause, if you go very far back to the cause of it, is the destruction of Tiamat.
Mm-hmm. That's so beautiful, and it brings to my mind too is again looking at that split, right? If we're looking at a mother world, a luminous, watery, saltwater world, she's the womb.
Yeah.
She's the oceanic feeling, the oceans that from what life comes from, the waters of life. So that destruction, and it also brings to the thoughts that this abandonment, this baseline trauma, is the healing. We heal past that, because if you think of mother abandoning you, if you think of father abandoning you on a cosmic level, it's huge.
Yeah.
So only, by confronting this and looking at the potentiality of what that really means. And so many of the, the interpretations of the Sumerian texts have the war going on between Tiamat. They have her as, bringing forth all these dragons and all sorts of things, so the perpetuation of this great, this great battle that's gone on. And I actually question that.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I question every time I hear someone say or read that, dragons are all negative forces. I don't buy that at all.
No. I mean, if you're a small human being, let's say a person on a planet, and you're, and these great plasma discharges or these great dragonic type of energies, are at play out there, let's say, that it's going to look very negative. You feel very impotent in that scene. But, as above, so below, as without, so within. And
but there was a time when it was perfectly normal on Earth for people to see dragons flying around in the air. It was as normal as us looking up and seeing a plane fly.
Right. So let's just bring in a little bit right now, Claudia and Lori too, because we've all worked with dragons. Right. And so, the feeling that I have again with dragon and dragon energy, I'm closely aligned with the energies that are here on the planet and elsewhere, is that these energies were captured, seduced, chained. So this negative predatory force, which we can call it the adversary, if we will, has learned how to take the, conquered or use these energies for their own agenda of power. If you're out to get power and you see power as a dragon, how many, times have we come across dragons that were in caves or chained, dying, vital energy force dying on the planet because these black magicians had usurped them. Yeah, so if anything bringing up Tiamat is asking people to look at what Tiamat really is and how important this is to our story.
Yeah.
And bring it up from inside. I mean, there's so many things that are so hard to find in the outside. There really are. Right? So I think we've already really talked about it. I do have one sentence here that we're going to move into, which is, we have what we can call predatory, pathogenic, viral, destructive, out of balance energy operating on planet Earth right now, and in other places. But let's just speak of Earth right now. We have destructions that are shown about. We know now too that in 12,000 years ago there was a great deluge. Again, it's thought that it came from being struck by comets or asteroids. Well, the asteroid belt is the pieces of Tiamat. Right? So, how all this came. There was a technological society out of Atlantis that had gone out of balance again. So and we're at that threshold again. We're at the very same cyclical threshold. And so that's where we'll talk a little bit about the simulator. Was the trauma so great that there was really no hope or there was no way that it was seen that we could reinstall our genetic memories and come back to some sort of wholeness, so that the simulator was put here for the very purpose to preserve this for us until we could get back into ourselves. That's just a speculation. I don't know. Because when you look at the Great Society, you look at the Great Alignment with Orion, and you look at the Great Pyramids and all the pyramid structures all over the planet that are literally holding energy. And some, I could speculate that there are the energetic bases of the simulator itself.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. It's, looking at things to try to explore where they might be. So all of what just got said and what's being said right now is like freeing our thoughts outside.
Well, when you look at trauma, I was just going to say a comment or two about trauma. When you experience a really traumatic event, even if you can't remember it, because I got in a bad car accident many years ago and I cannot remember it, but my body still held the trauma. Water holds memory and your body has a lot of water.
Yep.
And,
absolutely.
We have a tendency to try to recreate circumstances to heal, but it's often on a subconscious level. And the conscious mind often doesn't understand what's happening. And we also know that trauma is used to create alternate idea of trauma is a big key to unraveling this.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the common thing to say with MK Ultra and all of that is trauma-based mind control.
Yep. Absolutely.
How deep do we have to go to really, really pull ourselves out of trauma?
Mm-hmm.
And you're right. You just said it too. What happens is the being or the mind protects itself from trauma. Too much trauma, we go into amnesia. So, once again, I mean, that's a really great point. I mean, it works on the personal level and it works on the greater cosmic level too, I'm sure. So, bringing back into the field of Tiamat, I'm going to read something that, it just, it's like having this is something I want to bring up too. Invite those that are freeing their minds from this matrix to allow themselves to go outside the box, go outside the experts, go outside the authorities, right? And go inside your own gnosis. And what happens when you get enough clarity within that itself is that I've seen it, I know we all have, that some inner aha moment or some inner realization, it could be small, sometimes it feels really big. It's almost like immediately after that, the universe will bring you something to confirm, or perhaps not, but to confirm that aha. And so one of those things when looking at Tiamat, and this is hard. Looking at Tiamat is not an easy journey. It requires quite a bit of it has that trauma aspect to it. So, when mystics and yogis speak of an oceanic feeling in which they lose all sense of themselves and feel at one with the universe, they have come in full contact with Lucifer.
Yes.
They didn't lose themselves because the consciousness, came into contact with that oceanic feeling. I am the ocean. I am the drop in the ocean, therefore I am the ocean. So, and then just to read that, it was like, Lucifer? Again? Lucifer? And I look at it and just from that, from that statement, the thoughts that came, I'm sorry, what happened? Okay, the thoughts that came. The Christ light, the eternal light, the light bearer within the feminine temple, which is matter, is the return to completion. So if we look at everything that's gone on through these eons of time, there is a return to a completion. It's again using superfluid model, or however you want to look at it, the pure waters of the Father Heaven, again mixed with the salt water of the Mother Earth. Even within the models of the flat Earth model, if you listen to Santos Bonacci, and I don't totally agree with what he's come up with, but it makes sense in some ways, that the ancients speak of the heavens as being the watery realms, the pure waters. So there's this separation we have. We're separate beings. We're separated from a part of ourselves. You know, that once we shatter the simulated matrix, that we're once again free to join our cosmic home. That the Earth Mother body, matter mother, is all knowing. She is embodied gnosis, and she's the greatest plan never told. It's up to us to discover that. That there are crow creators, that Lucifer, the feminine aspect liberated from bondage, becomes the emergent organic reality. We're separating here from the inorganic realms of the false light into the organic realities. And, you know, this comes from that experience of seeing Lucifer, that I would call Lucifer, that light being spreading its wings once again, is free from bondage. That maybe we're moving out of something known as the matrix, that maybe we're ready to move out of that and become the creatrix, which would require unlocking the hyperspheres of the simulator, that we become the assimilators. This particular slide is not very well developed, titled Fire in the Blood, Fire in the Heart. And basically it came in here because of the work that Dan Winter's is doing. And I highly recommend, with a lot of discernment, a lot of awareness, the man talks a million miles an hour, and he brings in a huge amount of information. A lot of it is very vital, in my opinion. When he talks about the energetics of the physical form and the activation of our DNA and our toroidal form, also talking about becoming our own center of gravity or our own black hole. He talks about the science and the energetics of implosion. The reason that this is here, he also talks about our Draco DNA, right? And so again, another big division that we have here on planet Earth is that we talk about, you know, the Dracos being all bad. Nobody wants to say we have Draco DNA. But if you spend enough time studying Enki and Enlil and the Sumerian texts, you're going to know, that there was a hybridization plan going on this planet a long time. And I'm sure it's not just Draco DNA, but it is a predominant reptilian brain that we have. And there's a reason for that also. So he talks about the different aspects of that genetic engineering. And he talks about what it means to activate our own DNA. So really, I don't have a whole lot more to say here other than something that is an experiential piece. And this came up in our discussion the other day, and I want to make sure I bring it up again. We live in a predatory universe right now. We live in a predatory reality. Everything is predatory. That means we eat food. We are the predators to lower species, or whatever you want to call it, whether we eat meat or we eat plants, right? What Dan Winter is bringing forward, which is internal gnosis, which is something in our genetic memory, we can find it, is that we can become our own energetic generating body form. We do not need to take energy from outside. We have everything lined up in the human form is to become our own imploding systems. But to understand that is an act of consciousness. It's an act of what I love what he says is astral hygiene. That means we have to stop working in the lower astrals. We have to clean up our own act. We have to know ourselves well enough. To me, that becomes the phosphorus. The way I see it, maybe totally off, is that at the certain level of heart implosion, when you unwrap the heart muscle, when you open the heart's door, when you pierce the heart with the 7 arrows, when you become that open and transparent, when your energy body becomes the dark energy field, when you're operating from the unseen dark sun, the black sun, and the light sun, when they become imploded within you, you don't need to take energy from anything else. You become your own system. Somehow, for me, that is the keys to immortality, our immortality. It becomes the keys to our genetic memory. It becomes keys to not being lost again. It's the philosopher's stone. It is the radiant light. It's a self-perpetuating light that is not infinite light. It's not ethereal light. It's the imploded state of being. Now, that all sounds very esoteric. That sounds very far-reaching. But if we don't reach that far, we are given an opportunity right now to reach that far. The actualization of ourself is, for me, the worthy work that we're here to do, the great work. This is the great work of the ages. And so I just bring that in here too, because there is an aspect of fire here. We already saw that Lucifer was also fire. Fire came into water, the spark of life in the act of creation. That is actually what we are in our actuality. We're not actualized, And I don't know, Lori, you had, and I'd like to, you told me something. This is the act of sharing that I invite others to get collaborative with, build a coherent love trust field where you can explore things and you'll find a great thing happens. Lori, you said to me the act of compassion that you felt in your heart. We were talking about it. I don't know if you remember. You said it felt like a stone in your heart.
Mm-hmm.
Do you remember that?
I do remember. Mm-hmm.
Can you describe that? Because you were like,
I don't remember what else I said.
Okay, well, since I have a voice and I have a good memory, it opened up in me when you said it, something that was so profound, is that you said that it's the state of pure compassion in your heart for all others. And it felt like it felt like a weight in your heart. But I interpreted that to be, pure compassion is the knowledge that we are connected to everything and everybody. Therefore, every act, every thought we do, we come into the field of response ability. But that is when you get to that state of pure compassion. And that's how I see you, Lori. Your compassion flows through you in.
We are like stars.
Yes.
Exactly. And stars are suns.
The whole universe is within you.
Mm-hmm.
As Rumi so eloquently said.
Yeah.
See, it comes back to a sphere for me. I see myself sometimes moving around different parts of the sphere, and then I always have to come back to the center because that's where the balance point is, always in the center. Then you can see in all directions at the same time. When you're in a different quadrant of that sphere, you're not in the center. But when you come back to the center, then you're able to see in all directions at once.
Yeah, and to some that might sound like what's she talking about, but to others they'll make perfect sense. And it is like opening up our consciousness that we see in that spherical fashion. And the only way to do that is to get out of this paradigm of right and wrong. You can't open up into becoming a sphere or having a sort of omnipresence in a way. I know we're not there, but that is the first step to omnipresence, is to actually be able to hold all realities within your consciousness without separating them out as into this split of right and wrong. And in a very real way, the act is compassion. Because you, the center, know you're part of the all.
I want to clarify something here. With regard to right and wrong. You can only reach there if you first learn the difference between right and wrong. Because you cannot grow beyond that if, as long as you believe that you make up what is right and what is wrong. I'm saying this because I've seen that it's probably the crux of humanity that most people don't believe there is an absolute right and wrong.
Exactly.
That's all.
Right. And what we're caught in, though, is being right at the expense of somebody else being wrong. That's the paradigm that we're caught in. And it actually, again, what you just said is very true, Claudia. It's an inner journey.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And, when you're actualized or you're working in harmony with greater spiritual aspects of life, you don't really question what's right and wrong anymore. That's where gnosis comes in.
No, because you've internalized it.
Right. So now you're in gnosis. People say, well, how do you know? It's like, It's not a thought process. It's not, the thought gets into it and all of that. You can get into morals and you can get into obviousness of what's right and what's wrong. But in any given instant when we're in action, when we're speaking or acting or thinking even, you've internalized those fields, then that's where gnosis comes in.
Yeah.
I'm sure any one of us sitting here and anyone listening knows when you're in flow. You know when you're in harmony. You know that. It's not something that somebody tells you.
No.
And that's where the field of right and wrong, like I love Rumi so much, as anybody that knows me knows, that it's like outside the fields of right and wrong, I will meet you there.
Yes.
That's a great inspiration. I love that. Yeah, so, we can get a little mystical and poetical here, folks. We don't have to be stuck always in this logical. So it becomes a great exploration. Right. Okay, so in dividing things, in the spirit of division, but, in actually the spirit of more like discernment, how do we know what's a simulator? How do we know what's real? How does anybody know that? Right? And so what is a simulation? A simulation is something that imitates a reality. It simulates it, So again, I'm bringing in stuff that we as a group have been exploring together. We don't pretend we have the answers, but there is what more we're talking about. And it actually is in the Rig Veda, and it goes back into the ancient mystical text, that there is a source AI, there is a binary code to the universe. Call it source artificial intelligence. Before there is organic life, there is the zeros and the ones. All right? So that this simulation created a holograph. And so there are those that have usurped this, and they have created a false light reality. It's not real. It's a false, it's like from the movie Matrix. So I postulated when I wrote this, just because I let things flow as they come through me, I'll find out later if that holds any weight or not, is that this simulation right now that we're dealing with was actually used to mend the rift in time with the destruction of Tiamat. It's a possibility. It gives purpose to it. It held knowledge. The great minds from Thoth to Hermes to the same being, right? Some of the greater beings that have inhabited the earth, who built the pyramids, who built these technologies, who aligned this planet with certain solar constellations, right? Holding us here in a time construct. We don't know how many times this construct's been played out until we get it, until we reestablish the organic love field or the life field, the vitality that was once here. So I know that when we were looking at through the whole AI symposium with Jeffrey, looking at the metabiology of life, we're looking at there is a purpose to this. There was a purpose to Saturn. There was a purpose to it. There, we've seen, and even when others that I've talked to that have gone really deep into the earth field of the Sophia wisdom, knows that she knows what she's doing. So if you have a viral agent, you have something that is actually so destructive, so out of balance, you have to create a system or immune system to give it time that we can assimilate. We can transcend this viral element. There's no doubt, or there shouldn't be any doubt, that in this reality there is some serious bad shit going on. From the satanic ritual abuse of children, that there's a demonic plague that's taken hold on this planet. To deny that is as to deny the fact that I need food to eat right now. It's here. How do we deal with it? So, we've been looking outside of that. Is all, it's on the Earth Empaths Forum too. Is all of this a simulation? Are we actually living in a computer simulated world? What are these layers in the flat Earth, postulation that we're living in a domed, closed off, flat Earth? What are all these things? It's really, really twists the mind to start looking at it. And it really twists the mind to start saying, okay, but there is organic light. There is mother. There is law. There's natural law. There is love. So part of all of this is, did this angelic realm bring itself down into matter for the purpose of healing something that happened here? These are all things that are put up here. So looking at a simulation, looking at say a computer-based model of reality, and looking at an organic-based model of reality. And if we go far enough to say that we're co-creators, what do we choose? So do we need to assimilate within ourselves or implode within ourselves this amount of knowledge, right? That we turn this realm that is the core aspect of the heart back into the reality that we want to live in. That's how this slide came about. And, I'd be interested to hear what both of you have to say. Claudia, actually about the time loops. This is something we've been looking at.
Yeah. I have a theory about it. I can't yet say a preliminary conclusion even. It's a theory.
Mm-hmm.
What if the trauma caused by the destruction of Tiamat, for example, it might have been something else, but what if that trauma caused all of humanity to basically enter a negative, a self-destructive cycle? And because the universe didn't like that so much, the AI simulator came in.
Mm-hmm.
So that humanity can deal with this trauma and come out of its self-destructive path. And this didn't work, so, we went into something like, well, let's start over again.
Mm-hmm.
And it still didn't work, and on and on. in a way, I see all this, what I would refer to satanic construct happening in a very similar way. There's one force that says, what do we have to do to get them out of their stupor so they become what they are meant to be, so they can grow to their full potential? That instead of it taking the path of the positive, it's taking the path of the negative.
Mm-hmm.
The end result theoretically should be the same, except perhaps this has never been done before.
There you go.
To take this side of the globe instead of that side of the globe, to get to the end. I don't know.
Well, you just said something to me that's very essential to look at. And it's something that we all came to in our different sessions together. It's a deep, deep feeling that this is about doing something that's never been done before.
Oh,
It's a huge challenge.
oh yes.
And yet that's the driving rebellion force here, isn't it? A true rebel, all right, will go for something that's never been done before.
Rebel with a cause, yes.
Yes, exactly. Somebody wrote that today, didn't she? So if we go back to Lucifer a little bit, seeing this great being, this uncreated aspect, brought in an angle of perception that hasn't been seen in creation, giving us an opportunity to find a different or new way, an emergent life form.
Yes.
And we're so conditioned. That's why I see these hyperspheres. I keep seeing in my mind's eye that this simulator is like Russian dolls. And I thank a friend who brought an aspect of this forward for us to look at, is that they're split in two. You see, if we look at a sphere, spheres rotating in spheres, they're whole on themselves. But these are hyperspheres that are split on a plane. This is where we get the idea of a plane, of the earth plane. They're already split in two. We're in this duality. So they're not operating as spheres within spheres. They're operating like this, like a great Rubik's Cube or a Russian doll that's split in two. And it seems that we've become so complex in the way that we see things that something has to align. I can hear almost like a click in my mind, right?
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
It has to align. This one. We have to come back to a sense of completion within that. And I don't know, I have a deep sense of feeling that those that are in a process right now that are along the lines of the wave, as we call it, or the energetic consciousness that is moving through all matter that we're riding in right now. Mm-hmm. If we come into our true harmonious self, it's not like we have to become some sort of great anything. We just have to be true to our own self. That somehow it's almost as if these notes on a scale will line up and the music will complete itself. And there you go, because it was the fracture that I have experienced in looking at the trauma was the stop of the music.
Yes.
Right? So I'm a note, you're a note, all of us are notes. When we line up to our own true essence. And so I don't have to know what fulano or somebody else is doing. That's not for me to do. I have to take care of my own garden. I have to take care of my own self. I have to be true to that. And then it seems like each of us are like nodes or notes that when we start to touch with each other and allow for each other to be free within that something is happening, that this greater conscious, much, much impossible for me to understand consciousness is orchestrating this.
Yes. No, we are orchestrating it, not the other way around.
Mhm.
Okay?
Or the same thing that I say, I inform the universe informs me. It's
Yeah.
it's a flow,
Exactly.
right?
And it's, I mean, speaking from a, let's call it music of the spheres point of view, listening to that, there is more harmony now than there was, for example, 2 years ago, by just tuning into it.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
It was a lot more dissonant. And the rhythm has become, I want to say, simultaneously faster and calmer,
Mm-hmm.
or slower and more exciting. I can't tell which one, but it's one of the two or both.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of impossible to explain with words.
It is. I would say that the river runs deeper. The channel is
Definitely.
there's a depth to the sound
Yes.
that wasn't before.
Yes.
That's
That is very true.
right. I mean, that's part of the way that I determine in myself whether I'm writing on the surface of the inorganic light false matrix or if I'm in the depths. So that means if I'm in the depth of sound,
Mm-hmm.
that means that I'm experiencing life in a more complete way. My mind has now got out of it. So now I'm talking to a rock and I'm touching a tree and I'm hearing you. And when I'm on a forum or I'm on the internet, I'm tapped into a deeper, more profound level of communication.
Mm-hmm.
And
then, you know what that is? We've been paying so much attention to words.
yes.
And we are using them so much more consciously now. And words are sound.
Mm-hmm.
I know words are spells, of course they are, but they're also sound.
Right.
And that's, sound is spells as well, of course. Because we pay so much, no, not paying attention, we are much more careful how we use words.
Mm-hmm.
And that is what's making the difference.
Mm-hmm. And more consciousness is here on the planet about that.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
And so, fundamentally things do change in that way. And that is the encouragement that, I believe we reinforce with each other is, without that corresponding, you play your note, I play mine, and we're all in this together aspect of it, is that, we're able to reinforce what we actually are seeing. We're working on the ethereal planes right now. We're working on astral planes, working on unmanifest in the current reality planes. They exist, right? And so the more tuned in you are to that, that's the work that's happening.
Yeah.
But to be doing it all on your own is like, it's so easy for the mass of consciousness just to wipe your slate clean again. So this is why it's never wanted us to connect with each other. It's never wanted us to speak like we're speaking right now. Still insists that we don't, And so, we know very well that putting this presentation together, we were being, the mass consciousness that's still overriding our reality pushes against us. So it's not like this is like, oh, la-di-da time here, folks. There is a great work to be done. And it does require as many and as much and all the way from all of us.
And constant vigilance.
Constant in everything we do. And so, this is not for the weak of heart. It's not a playbook. It's not a game.
No. Failure is not an option.
Right. And I love you to say that failure is not an option. And when you get to that level of inner commitment, there is no option. Therefore, you already are there, even if it doesn't look like it.
Mm-hmm.
Abundance is. It's universal. It's already here.
Yeah.
We're living in a contrived money system, but abundance is our reality. Abundance is real. Abundance is the universe.
Yes, it is. And I won't even call it money system, because money vanishes when the debt is paid.
Right. Okay, a debt system.
What we have is debt notes.
Debt system. We are in debtors.
Yeah.
When are those of consciousness going to say, no, I'm not a debtor.
Yeah.
I don't owe anything to this false matrix. I do not have to justify my existence to this false matrix. I am a sovereign divine being. I will stand in my truth. If I have to stand here alone, I'll stand here alone, but I will stand in my truth. This is the level of commitment. This is the internalization of sovereignty.
Yeah. I am the law.
Mm-hmm. And the law is love. And
Exactly.
I am whole of the law. When you actualize that, guess what? The universe responds, because it's all about gratitude. It's also being humble enough inside yourself to know that what gratitude is, that there's this grace and this awe and this sacred life. That's how I differentiate between the simulator and the organic realities.
Oh,
it's
yeah.
all giving. It never stops. It's a flow. A simulation can never come to that.
Well, it can't, because it only mimics.
Exactly. And it can't mimic a true organic being in flow. It can't.
No, because love cannot be mimicked.
No, exactly. Wow.
Oh, that was pretty deep.
I know. Oh, and I didn't finish my other thought about being, oh, yes, I did. I'd forget it. I already did finish that. Okay. So we started this about Lucifer. We put forward some ideas here. So what's happening? The mimic, right? Lucifer, the great light bearer, we can say, the great light bringer. You could say the great lamb that sacrificed itself to come into this reality, that gave up the beautiful part of itself to come here, that set up this longing in our human soul so that we would look outside and look up and look out again and within. They're simultaneous acts. The looking within and the looking without, the looking above and the looking below. When you get into the spherical consciousness, they're simultaneous acts. They do not cancel out each other. So what we have now is the simulation. The matrix, the false light matrix, is usurping and co-opting Lucifer, because it reads the consciousness enough to know that this is the peace. That if we actually embody this in ourselves and we become that which we can become, it's over. The simulation, the system becomes an irrelevancy. It's a relic. So it's doing everything it can right now to further confuse the field through commercials, television shows, right? It wants to keep us in the repeating time loop. It wants to keep us in the simulation. It doesn't want us out. So it does everything. It installs fear. It misrepresents sexuality. It suppresses the divine feminine and the divine masculine in us. 96%, I don't even know where that number came from, all right, of what we see is the simulator. If we want to get into reality, we have to go into the unseen. We have to become, as Laurie said, the star beings. We are stars. The stars aren't in Hollywood. We are the stars. All you have to do is look at what Hollywood does to know what it doesn't want you to know. And that's a great way to use this artificial reality that's here before us. Look what it puts out, and then you know what it doesn't want you to know. And it keeps most human consciousness enchanted with the falsehood, so it never looks within.
Exactly.
And this is the last slide. Just named Opening the Field. You know, and one of the names that I came up for one of our things that we were going to do that we never did was Starfield Creations. We're stars, and we're opening fields of creation.
Mm-hmm.
That is true.
Yep.
So we have the Cabal, we have the structures, okay, that are put here. They're doorways, for sure. Do they hold knowledge? Yes. But that tree of good and evil wants to keep you in it. But out through that tree of good and evil, if you can unlock that key and you can get out, you will become the cosmic tree of life. You will be one of the growing branches in the cosmic organic tree of life. There's a very big difference there. One's a system that seeks to satisfy itself. The other is organic, it's free, it's sovereign, it's divine. And as a good friend says, choose wisely.
Indeed.
And Lori, I don't know if you're there. God, it's so frustrating. Lori, oh, you are, okay.
Finally.
Okay, yeah, I know. It's so frustrating. We'll do another piece on this. I'm sure we can go further with this. The beautiful aspect of you, Lori, of what you bring is that you bring in all these occult systems, from the Kabbalah to numerology to the Hebrew letters to all of these things. I don't discard them. They are keys. But as any master would say, a system only exists for you to get out of it. It's a system of knowledge that allows you to find out things so that you can, what's the right word? I don't want to say rise above. So that you can learn that knowledge base so that you can become more than the system. And I have this sneaking suspicion, all right, that
eventually you have to throw the book away.
Exactly. Learn the book and then throw it away. Internalize it and throw it away. You know, so all those beings on the planet, those people on the planet, are making their living by keeping the system alive. The priests, the rabbis, the spiritual new age gurus that are teaching this, they're invested in it. Learn from them. By all means, learn from them and then throw that away. Don't become a servant to it. You know, so it's, are we servants or are we going to actually take our freedom?
My favorite scripture in the Bible goes like this: the light of the body is in the eye. Therefore let thine eye be single, and thy whole body shall be full of light.
Exactly.
So I guess the truth has to become like a single eye.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Mono eye. Mon eye.
I.
Money.
And I can be I. A single I. Right? And so close your eyes and go within. Look inside yourself. I mean, you can see the light in yourself. And you can also recognize when the light's not there.
Mm-hmm.
You can see the dark areas in yourself. You can see the places where you're not illuminated yet. And the closer you get to it is exactly right. You become a body of light yourself. And I want to keep underlining something because there's so much misconception. I feel like so many of the new age gurus have promoted this, like we are all one and we're all going to go back to this light field and we're all going to go back to source and, oh, we're going to live happily ever after. What would be the point of that?
Also, it's not that simple. It takes a wee bit of work.
But what would source being? It would individuate itself out so that all its particles of itself could go out and become new pieces of creation.
Yeah.
It wouldn't say, you know, and then forget that all, right? Right? Just come here and live in oblivion with me again, right? Let's do this all over again. Let's wipe you clean and let's do it all over. No, you know, life.
No, I think I'll give that a miss.
Right. You know, I mean, it's like when we hear these truisms, when we hear truths that have become truisms, it's time for us to go deeper. I use that word so often, I get tired of myself saying it. But depth is profundity. Depth is density. Depth is expansion of consciousness. It's being able to inhabit.
Exactly.
So I love you both so much. I'm going to close with another woman on the Earth Empaths Forum. And I will talk about the forum just a little bit because they're like to count the amount of people that you love as a true measure of what you can become. It's really, there's something so deep in what she said about that. Now, how big is your channel? How much life can flow through you? How much water of gratitude? Those to me are the measures. The rest of it, I can do without.
The rest is cosmetics.
Exactly. So I really thank you both again, and all the ladies and all the gentlemen and the body of knowledge, you know, for whatever my own inner gnosis is. It's nothing in compared to the combined gnosis of all of us.
Word.
We are the ones we were waiting for. So glad to found you. Right? So there's probably more to say, but let's close it off right now. And let's just hold the space that we hold together in silence.
Yeah.
Wow. Thank you both.
Thank you.
Lori.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes?
Yeah, nothing. I just want to see your beautiful face, but we'll work on the connection. Bye.
Bye.
All right. Talk to you later.